Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. In today's video, Rtx Reviews, Oppenheimer. As you can see, I'm using a video game clip recorded on my PC as the backdrop for this video instead of promotional clips of the movie itself, as I did with my previous review. You can watch the previous review by clicking on the I button or following the link in the description. The reason for this change is twofold. It'll be easier and faster to edit my reviews this way, and watching a video game's gameplay while discussing the film will be more interesting than watching its promotional clips, which most of you would have already seen. You may call me lazy, but this is the only way I can produce more reviews within a given period of time without compromising quality. Moving on to the topic, after watching Oppenheimer, I can confidently say that it was definitely worth the hype. It is one of director Christopher Nolan's better movies, surpassing his recent works such as 2020's Tenet, which in my opinion was emotionally lacking, and the very divisive Dunkirk from 2017. However, I must mention that Oppenheimer is still a somewhat divisive movie, just not to the extent of Dunkirk. It's not a movie that will be universally liked by Nolan's fans or the general audience. Nevertheless, for me, the movie was a cinematic marvel and one of the best biopics in recent memory. Let's begin with the positives, and trust me, there are many. The best aspect of this film is its sound design, without a doubt. Throughout most of the movie's 3-hour running time, there's ambient music playing in the background that escalates and normalizes depending on what's happening on screen. Overall, the background score is nothing short of marvelous. It has a horror-esque feeling, especially during the uncanny valley sequences that psychologically haunt Oppenheimer, while at the same time evoking awe, wonder, and curiosity during other parts of the movie. The sound design by Ludwig Göransson, in my opinion, reaches its peak during the Trinity test sequence, one of the most cinematic sequences I've seen in a while. That 5-minute sequence, including its build-up through both expository and visual storytelling, is nearly flawless. I watched the movie in a Dolby Atmos theater, and the pin drop silence during the explosion was deafening. Then, when the explosion's sound we anticipated finally kicked in, it felt as if our seats tremored. Director Christopher Nolan has truly mastered the craft of utilizing sound efficiently in a movie's storytelling. He has been refining this art in all of his mainstream movies since 2005's Batman Begins, and Oppenheimer's sound design is arguably the best among all of his movies, perhaps only rivaled by Dunkirk. Secondly, the movie boasts excellent performances across the board, as expected from a Christopher Nolan feature. Even in movies like 2010's Inception, where the supporting characters had little to no background lore or character arcs, the performances of the actors in those roles were the saving grace. Cillian Murphy as Robert J. Oppenheimer delivers an exceptional performance that will surely be remembered as one of his best, and Robert Downey Junior as Lewis Strauss is equally outstanding. Matt Damon's portrayal of Leslie Groves is extremely good, and Emily Blunt and Florence Pugh, along with other prominent actors playing different scientific stalwarts in the film, did a commendable job as well. Honestly, it's been a long time since I saw a movie with the entire cast leaving such a lasting impression on me with their acting. Thirdly, the movie's cinematography is thoroughly top-notch, which is, again, expected from a Christopher Nolan film, considering his work in Interstellar from 2014 and Dunkirk. Not only does this movie have some extremely beautiful and horrifying shots that could easily be made into wallpapers, but the visual storytelling intertwined with the cinematography is immensely rewarding upon rewatch. The last time a Christopher Nolan movie had such a visual storytelling with its distinct arc was back in 2006's The Prestige. Although even in that film, it wasn't as explicit and apparent. When you rewatch the film, focus on the details of a particular shot or scene, and you'd be able to connect what's symbolically shown to different parts of the movie, including its stellar yet harrowing ending. Fourthly, the set design and set pieces of this film are amazing. One could argue that this is Christopher Nolan's magnum opus in those aspects. The movie transports you to that era, and you actively feel like you're part of the movie's world. That's how good the set design, look, and costumes of the characters are. Speaking of set pieces, I must once again express my admiration for the Trinity test set piece. It's incredibly impressive that the entire sequence was shot without CGI, and only VFX such as color grading and toning were applied during the film's post-production. This is undoubtedly Nolan's greatest achievement in terms of practical effects, a cinematic marvel best experienced in theaters with good speakers exclusively. Fifthly, the movie's pacing is extremely good for the most part. One of the biggest reasons why this movie doesn't feel long despite its 3-hour runtime is its non-linear screenplay, which I will discuss later. It keeps the viewers engaged in what's happening on screen, even though the movie is exposition heavy. The pacing ensures that a particular sequence doesn't drag on for too long. After all, This isn't an abstract and subjective movie focused mostly on visual storytelling like Martin Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey from 1968. Therefore, the movie jumps from one scene to another quite quickly, but it doesn't rush anything. Sixth, the movie has truly excellent characterization, not only for the main leads but also for all the secondary characters. It's not really a fictional narrative, so there are no typical character arcs that come full circle by the movie's end. However, there are arcs in the conversations between characters which either come full circle in some form near the movie's end or totally surprise us when their true meanings are revealed after a suspenseful build-up. Seventhly, the film showcases some excellent dialogue writing. This movie is a 3-hour long exposition heavy biopic, so it really needed some memorable and impactful conversations, and Christopher Nolan's writing absolutely nailed that. The conversation between Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein at the film's climax will easily be remembered as one of the most cinematically memorable sequences in my recent memory, not only due to the suspenseful build-up to it or the amazingly good performances by the actors coupled with stellar background music, but also the very well-written dialogues completing the screenplay's overarching character arc. Finally, the movie's screenplay is praiseworthy. Christopher Nolan loves non-linear storytelling, which is evident when you look at most of his mainstream movies. Oppenheimer is no exception. Most of the movie's plot takes place in a flashback, and the said flashback has its own flashback sequences. Near the end, the movie's plot has reached present time, but the suspense about a particular sequence that was actively building up throughout the film's length is only resolved at the movie's very end. The reveal is incredibly well done. However, unlike all the positive aspects of the film I discussed till now, the screenplay does have some issues, which I'll address in the negatives of this film that I'm going to talk about now. This movie doesn't really have any glaring negatives that you'd remember for long. It's not wholly flawless, sure, but the objective mistakes this movie makes are very few and may sound like nitpicking to some. Anyway, the primary negative of this movie is that its screenplay feels dragged during the interrogation sequence of the film, which forms a major part of its third act. Basically, what happens in that sequence is that nearly all the characters we had seen in the movie show up before a commission and give testimonies about Oppenheimer as well as his affiliations. This sequence, which lasts about 20 minutes, could have been brought down to 5 minutes. It still would have had all the important scenes and dialogues as well as having the same impact. A secondary negative for me in this film would be an extended nudity sequence, which is basically a sexually intimate scene. Out of all the Christopher Nolan movies, this movie needed such a sequence the least. Although there's a very popular dialogue associated with Oppenheimer present in that sequence, which comes full circle during the Trinity test sequence, there definitely could have been other ways to construct this arc in a more subtle manner. These are the only objective criticisms of this movie in my opinion, but I'd like to address some subjective and opinionated criticisms as well. Some people may not like Christopher Nolan's fast pacing and multi-layered screenplay in the first 2 acts of the film and may not be able to fully delve into the then American socio-political context as presented in the film. But honestly, the pacing and screenplay of this movie is Nolan's trademark. I personally like it as I've seen most of his movies and films by other directors too, which follow the same narrative structure and screenwriting. However, not preferring Nolan's filmmaking style is perfectly fine as well. Regarding not being able to fully understand the then American socio-political context as presented in the film, well, a director can only do so much in a biopic on such a loaded subject despite having a 3-hour runtime. You need to have a basic understanding of the historical topic and the socio-political context it's set in before watching a biopic, especially when the concerned biopic is very expository as it pertains to nuclear physics, geopolitics during World War II, and the aftermath of the Japanese nuclear bombings for Oppenheimer's universe. Some people may argue that it doesn't show us Japan's POV, but I don't think that was really needed. We have already seen plenty of Japan's POV in the mainstream media till now, and what happened in Japan was the USA's doing anyway, not Oppenheimer's. Oppenheimer just built the bomb on paper, and this movie was about just that as well as his life from his university days up until old age. And the movie does show the psychological horrors Oppenheimer goes through after the atomic bombings, as well as the immediate effects of an atomic bomb in the form of an uncanny valley sequence I talked about earlier. Now, should you watch this movie in the best possible IMAX theater available to you, as director Christopher Nolan recommends? Well, my friend did see this movie in IMAX laser 70mm format, and according to him, it's not really worth it unless you want to see the characters' faces cover most of the screen for about 95% of the movie's runtime. The black and white sequences, which were shot by actually developing an IMAX 70mm black and white reel for the first time ever, as Nolan would rather do that than desaturate the colors of certain scenes in post-production, don't really feel all that different from from black and white scenes achieved through VFX in other movies meant for IMAX 70mm. The actual explosion, which we see during the Trinity test sequence, lasts about 1.5 minutes, and although it looks absolutely phenomenal in IMAX 70mm format, that alone doesn't really render the ticket price completely worth it. My friend and I both agreed on the assessment that a theater equipped with good speakers such as Dolby Atmos is the better way to immerse yourself in this movie rather than just watching it on a big screen with a very high resolution such as IMAX 70mm. And that wraps up this review, guys. Oppenheimer is one of Christopher Nolan's better movies, definitely topping his recent works like Tenet and Dunkirk. This movie is perfect from pretty much all the objective standpoints. However, it may not be for everyone. You need to have a basic knowledge of the historical topic it pertains to and the socio-political context it's set in before watching this 3-hour-long exposition-heavy biopic. Also, screenplay and pacing-wise, this is the epitome of Nolan's filmmaking. The narrative structure it follows is very multidimensional, and nearly all the scenes in the first 2 acts of the film are very fast-paced. So you have to be attentive while watching this movie or you may miss some important plot points. I rate this movie an 8.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Like, share and subscribe. I'll catch you in my next video. Until then, peace and have a nice day ahead. Bye bye for now.